Welcome back to Rich Girl Roundup. Now, normally I would take a listener's question and answer it. And as my standard disclaimer, I am not offering financial advice. But this week, we are switching things up. Kayla Choates, a Morning Brew fellow and aspiring rich girl with a focus on journalism, will be interviewing me. Kayla, thank you so much for taking the time. I am excited to chat today.
Thank you for having me, Katie. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you today. So I am a recent graduate from Texas Southern University, and my first question today is going to be, what is something you wish you would have known about securing a job post-graduation life before walking across that stage?
I think I probably would have told myself to relax a little bit. I had put a ton of pressure on myself to have a job right out of graduation. And I had an internship, but I did not have a full-time job offer. And that was a very, very stressful summer. And I think at the time, it's a little cliche, but I probably would have told myself to just relax a little bit and try to enjoy it a little bit more. And rather than just worrying about getting that offer in hand and making sure I had something, really sitting back and asking myself, what do I actually want to be doing? And what would excite me? And what would I really enjoy doing for 40 hours a week, right? Because when you're going from college to the working world, I think we have a lot of expectations around what that's going to be like, and it can be disappointing sometimes when those expectations are not met, particularly because we are going from a world in which we're in class for 2 hours a day, and then suddenly it's 8 hours, 9 hours straight in an office. So I think I would have made it a little bit less about, oh my gosh, I just need to make sure I have that employment offer in hand, and a little bit more about, let me think pretty critically about what it is that I actually want to be doing full time.
I can definitely relate a lot to that because I am kind of in that stage of, oh, wow, what can I do? What can I do? So I'll definitely take your tips and start enjoying this moment and this process so much better.
Yes.
So those,
absolutely.
Thank you. Those are some great tips. I'd love to kind of switch gears into a few money related questions. First, how do you find trustworthy sources for financial news? There is a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of hot takes. I'd love to know how to determine what news source is trustworthy, factual, and actually worthwhile.
That's a really good question. I think when I think about where I am getting financial news, and I have not always been the best at this because I think it's very easy to see the people around you in your social circles sharing things, or if you are on money Twitter, so to speak, there are a lot of personalities on there that have very hot takes, to your point. And so I think it's almost a two-part assessment where looking at the source and determining what would the vested interest be of this publication. For example, there are some very interesting numbers around rent increases that were floating around a few months ago that were making the news and were very, I'm going to say salacious, that might be the wrong word, but they were really cherry picking the most extreme examples. And it turns out the source was a study by Rocket Mortgage. It's like, okay, well, maybe these numbers are accurate, but they're probably not painting a very clear picture because the source of that information has a vested interest in you not being a renter. They are a mortgage lender, right? So I think that's one piece of it. The other piece of it that I would say that has been very surprising to me as I try to find sources for the shows and for the blog and the newsletter is that you can look up the same fact or statistic from 10 different places and get 10 different answers. So I think it's important to always try to validate the things that you're learning somewhere else and make sure that if you read something that doesn't sound quite right, that you're able to independently verify that with another source. Those would probably be my two biggest things. And then just a general watch out that a lot of content in the personal finance world is sponsored. I mean, all media is sponsored. That's how media makes money, is advertising dollars. So being kind of on the lookout for any articles that are sponsored by a brand that either paints them or what they would like you to do very favorably, it doesn't necessarily mean the information is wrong or that it's not truthful, but you should be aware of who is paying for that type of information.
Yes. Thank you for definitely pointing out the biases that there are, when it comes to these statistics and these facts that come out. So it's to always verify with multiple sources. So that makes a lot of sense. And as a recent graduate and someone that the idea of student loans is popping up in my head and a lot of my peers, you hear a lot of talk about debt. And how exactly do you define good debt versus bad debt? Is it logical to put yourself in debt for student loans for future payouts? How does this whole process really work?
Yeah. Well, I think the student loan debt conversation is a really complex one because there's a lot of factors at play, and I think there's a lot of blame we could assign for the kind of the mess that we're in now and the mess that students are finding themselves in now. But I think in general, anytime you are taking on debt to acquire an asset that is going to go up in value, so likely a home, not always, but usually, most likely the house is going to appreciate in value. That's a pretty good example of societally acceptable debt, mortgage debt. No one looks down on mortgage debt and is like, oh my gosh, that person's so irresponsible. But it is debt. It's leverage, right? And I think you can think about student loan debt in a similar way. You're investing in your human capital and in yourself as the asset that is likely going to produce cash flows in the future that can then service the debt. Now, the caveat I think worth making is that not every degree is created equal. Not every skill set or college education is created equal. So I think there has to be some level of prudent assessment happening at the time of taking out the debt, whether that's on the part of the 18-year-old or their parents, hopefully, that are guiding them to say, if you're going to take out $100,000 worth of debt, let's look at the degrees that would warrant that much debt, where the future cash flows of that skill set will be able to service 6 figures of debt. And I think that it's not a binary. I definitely think of it as a sliding scale of you can take out hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to go to school, but you really want to make sure that at the other side of it, you are going to be an asset now that is capable of servicing the debt.
You put it in a way that you can really, visualize what you're talking about and
thank you.
The good versus bad debt. It actually leads me into my final question. When we're young, we trade our time in search of money. And when we're old, we trade our money in search for time. Mm-hmm. Does an actual balance truly exist?
That is the $1 million question. I think it's possible to find a balance that works for you, but I think it's a practice. I don't think it's something that you achieve once and then live in that static state. So to your point, when you're young, you are trying to give of the resource that you have a lot of to get more of the resource that you don't have a lot of. So if you have a lot of time as a young person, which most of us do if we're single, childless, we're probably not too far up that corporate ladder yet, so we're not working crazy hours. I think at that point, you do have a lot of time available to you. You also probably have a lot of energy available to you if you're 22 and able-bodied and like neurotypical. So I would say that is the time to really be like, okay, I want to get more of that resource that I don't have very much of right now, money for most of us. But I do think that the trick and the trap is that we fall into that mindset as maybe adults, I'm using air quotes, or, more middle-aged or elder, that I have to continue to trade all my time for money. And why would I pay someone else to clean my house or to cook for me or to walk my dog? Like, I can do those things myself. It's like, yeah, but what if you could get that time back? It gets to a point where you're almost hoarding the money, when in reality, the resource that you have too much of is money, and the resource that you don't have enough of is time. So I think that calculus looks different for everybody depending on their life circumstances, the amount of money that they have available to them. But I do think it's important to remember that money really is a means to an end, and there is such thing as enough. And that's not a very popular sentiment in the United States. I think we are always in search of more money, but we kind of lose sight of the fact that the entire point of accumulating wealth is to buy back your own time. Maybe you should be willing to give up a little bit more of your time to get a little bit more of the money to balance those scales.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. I loved everything, all the great advice you were able to give me. I know a lot of people in my same position are really going to take what you said and really help, as they go forward into life. So thank you again for letting me interview you for Rich Girl Roundup.
Absolutely. That was so fun, Kayla. Thank you. You did a great job.